Have you ever thought about the science and tech that's involved in Star Wars? Yeah, I know. It's Star Wars Day, and I had to take advantage at this moment. So, yeah, the science and tech of Star Wars. And yeah, there is some kind of, well, we might be stretching it just a bit. So, on today, of all days, we're going to discuss and break down 7 topics. Everything from droids and AI to a pesky question that has kind of plagued me, at least, throughout the entire empire. Happy Star Wars Day, and may the 4th be with you. All right, so the first thing up today is going to be humans versus droids versus automation. So, in a galaxy far, far away teeming with advanced technologies, droids can engage in complex conversations. They can navigate starships and even exhibit really some form of personality, give or take. But it's always bothered me that we still have human people, human officers, manning the bridge of a colossal star destroyer. My thing is, if we're that far advanced in the future, why haven't we developed some type of automation to take over some of these roles? Where is the AI? Why are they not using the droids for more complex tasks? The answer honestly lies deep within the Star Wars lore. It's rooted in a series of events that have instilled a lasting kind of skepticism towards artificial intelligence. Have you heard of something called the droid revolutions? Well, you're about to. So one of the most significant events contributing to the distrust in the droid revolution was spearheaded by IG-88 assassin droids. So the IG-88s is what I'm going to call them. So this planned uprising aimed to exterminate all biological life, which honestly they deemed inferior, so there goes the human population. Their strategy really involved embedding sleeper codes into countless droids across the galaxy. And the main intent? They wanted to activate them all simultaneously in one coordinated attack. Although the revolution was thwarted before it could even start, the mere possibility of such a widespread insurrection left an indelible mark on the galactic future. So, being Star Wars and the Imperial and all that jazz, they decided to put together some measures and had containment and control in response to these threats. The Galactic Empire established the Imperial Droid Anti-Sapient Unit, and it was a specialized bureau basically tasked with monitoring and suppressing any signs of droid independence or sentience. This unit focused on preventing group contagion and dismantling dangerous individual intelligences. Intelligences? I don't know, it just sounds kind of weird, but we'll go with it. Ensuring that droids remained subservient tools rather than autonomous entities. So there are some actual real-world parallels that occur with artificial intelligence within the Star Wars universe and what is happening within our own world today. So in today's world, there have been a lot of concerns about AI decision making in critical areas. Think of military applications or healthcare and finance. And these really mirror the apprehensions that you kind of see depicted in the Star Wars universe. So the balance between leveraging AI and their capabilities and ensuring it doesn't surpass human oversight is one of the challenges that exist in both galaxies. And there's a common thread of concern for all of these. At the core of these issues really is trust. How much we're willing to let machines make high-stake decisions for us, especially when right now the artificial intelligence that we know, they learn from biased data. They lack explainability. They operate too fast for human intervention, and they really have unclear accountability when things go wrong. And the last thing, just from my personal perspective, is as I mentioned, they can get creative when trying to meet goals. For science, think about the movie I, Robot and how AI twisted the interpretations of the 3 laws and basically thought to ensure the best good way to protect humans is to lock them away as we are a danger to ourselves. Not that they're totally wrong. I do kind of feel like sometimes you have folks that want to go jump out of airplanes, which would be very unsafe and really goes against their goals. So I can feel for them in that capacity. But the real question is, how do you feel about AI making decisions on your behalf? But on a real note, if I'm being honest, as long as they're not trying to, unalive me, I'm okay with them taking over my adulting duties anytime they want. AI can come run my life. I'm pretty good with that. Because honestly, adulting is hard. Okay, so in The Last Jedi, for those that remember and seen the movie, Luke Skywalker was alone on a remote island and he projects himself across galaxies. He's not a hologram. He's not a recording. He's a living image. He fights, he speaks, he saves the resistance, and then he disappears like stardust. Now, some call this Jedi wizardry, but some physicists might see this as a very, very, very faint echo of something else, possibly quantum entanglement. Listen, I told you all I was going to stretch this just a little bit, so just bear with me and let's have a little fun. So, all right. If you've been with me since I started this journey with the archive, then you heard my first podcast about quantum entanglement. I discussed the book, The Three-Body Problem, and I got a lot of people that said they just didn't understand. So if I failed you in that manner, I have to try again. I am so sorry for having to say this one more time, but quantum entanglement is cool, and I think I got it this time. So here we go. How to understand quantum entanglement. I'm going to use something called the coin flip analogy. I honestly don't know if that was actually made up or if that's like a real thing or not, but that's kind of the gist of where I'm going with, okay? So just hang in there. We're getting there. So here's the simple way to think about it. Imagine two coins. You have one coin in your hand and one in a friend's hand. And let's say your coin in your hand is on the moon, and your friend's coin is in his hand on, let's say, Mars. So these coins are entangled, meaning that they're linked. If you flip yours and it lands on heads, theirs will always land on tails. And it's not because they communicate with each other. It's not because they send messages to one another. It's because they're always connected. It's not magic. It's not even communication. It's just connection. They were paired at the start, whether they were created that way or somehow got entangled. But knowing one means you know the other, even if they're across distant galaxies. So even Einstein called it spooky action at a distance because it didn't make sense. It shouldn't happen that way. But unfortunately, the universe really doesn't care about us and what our thoughts are. At least there was no board meeting that I was aware about it. So sometimes physics. And one of the big questions, and maybe you have this question too, was what does connection even mean when it comes to the entanglement part of it, right? That is the real spooky part, is we don't actually know. We know the outcome, but not the how when it comes to this. And right now we have some of the same issues with artificial intelligence. You may have read an article that was provided by Anthropic when they were building one of their models and trying to understand how it makes decisions. So the gist is we know how to build it. We understand how we get the output, but we don't really know what happens in between, how AI basically makes the decisions and choices to give you the final output. And it's called the AI black box. Now, this isn't something new in science. There are a lot of things that we discover or create first without actually knowing how it works. I mean, if you really think about it, the guy that first discovered fire, so pretty, so many colors. I don't know, maybe the first guy that discovered fire had a British accent or tried to. I'm working on it. So the short story here is science is cool because we don't just accept things. We need to know how they tick. And I know you're all thinking, could quantum entanglement apply to people? Could quantum entanglement apply to people? That is a really good question. Let me think about that for a second. So today we've entangled photons, atoms, and even tiny diamonds. But what if in advanced civilization, like Star Wars, this principle could scale up? What if consciousness, emotion, memory, the self, what if those could become entangled? Maybe Luke didn't send anything. Maybe he tuned his very being into the same quantum field as Leia and Kylo. He didn't broadcast. He resonated. Not a projection, a synchronization. You've probably heard this spoken before, but in the end, we're all stardust. But what if maybe just a little bit more? Here's a thoughtful, speculative, unproven, but kind of beautiful idea. If we're all made of stardust, born from the same collapsing stars, forged in the same cosmic furnaces, then maybe entanglement isn't just a trick of particles, Maybe it's a whisper of something deeper, a connection that science really hasn't learned to name yet. Maybe because science, isn't just answers, but it's a way of asking better questions. So we hear a lot about the force projection, and we've talked a lot about quantum entanglement here. But let me leave you with this from a reflective standpoint. So the force, maybe it's not magic. It just might be a metaphor for the ultimate truth that nothing in the universe is ever truly alone. Now, one of the cooler things in the Star Wars universe, because I like science and technology, but come on, having some of that superhero aspect just makes it that much cooler. And who didn't want to be a Jedi as a kid? But it kind of made me wonder, the Jedi, is that something that they just learned and trained? Do y'all remember that wild scene in The Phantom Menace where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn dash away from battle droids with lightning speed? Or the scene where Anakin leaps between speeders mid-air? And I believe that was in Attack of the Clones. Or how about when Luke was springboarding through the air in Empire? So these moments aren't just for flash. They reflect a real core of Jedi skill, the ability to transcend normal human limits. Now, in Star Wars, these feats are enhanced by the Force. It's just part of its canon. So Jedi use it to amplify their strength, their speed, their endurance, honestly, even their survivability. But we're not ignoring any of that. But just for this specific segment, let's explore parts of these feats that might be achievable without magic or without the Force, unless you have the Force and you're willing to share and teach us how it's done. But just with human physiology, brain chemistry, and even future technology. Have you ever heard of something called hysterical strength? And no, that's not when your wife gets mad at you and is able to throw things with the speed of a professional pitcher from baseball. So hysterical strength, when basically humans go full Jedi, there are some real cases where people have done extraordinary feats, like lifting a car off someone in danger. And take some of these for examples. And I had to double check some of these just to make sure they were real. But Angela Cavallo in 1982, Georgia, she lifted a 1964 Chevy Impala off of her teenage son, Tony, after it fell from its jack, basically trapping him underneath. She held the car up long enough for neighbors to replace the jack and pull him to safety. And there was another story involving a woman named Lauren Kernacki. Apologies if I said that wrong. But in 2012 Virginia, Lauren, who was just a 22-year-old female, lifted a BMW 525i off of her father after it collapsed on him while he was working underneath it. So note to self, don't work on cars. You might live longer. And one of the coolest stories that I actually came upon was comic book artist Jack Kirby. He claims he was inspired to create the Hulk after seeing a woman lift a car to save her baby in 1962. So these type of incidents are rare, but it does happen, and this is called hysterical strength. So in those moments of life or death panic, the brain floods the body with adrenaline, and it's overriding natural safety limiters, and it's basically unlocking maximum muscle fiber. So normally, our brains act like governors on an engine. They cap performance so we don't tear ligaments or blow out our heart. But under those extreme threats, that governor somehow gets turned off. So there was a theory that was proposed by Dr. Tim Noakes called the central governor theory. And this theory suggests the brain limits performance preemptively to preserve life. But athletes, martial artists, and elite performers, they train to delay or even override this limit. Some expand their capacity through conditioning, while others kind of do this through sheer mental control. So the Jedi just may be the fictional ultimate of this type of concept, where humans who've trained to turn off those mental brakes. So when it comes to peak human potential, the real question is, how close are we? Now, we have elite athletes that already exhibit superhuman-like feats, and I could think of someone like Usain Bolt. Now, he has these fast twitch muscles which have perfect timing, or free divers that lower their heart rates to survive minutes underwater. And think of UFC fighters, how they react in milliseconds. This is all trained, this is all real. Add in genetic enhancements or CRISPR edits, and maybe even wearable exosuits or neural implants, and we may one day push past today's limits. So going back to the Jedi, there are some real Jedi moments in sci-fi and reality, and where that scene where Luke jumps 10 feet, it really mirrors parkour artists scaling walls, or Obi-Wan dodging blasters. Think pro tennis returns. But most striking, the Jedi, they're calm under pressure. They're almost in like a meditative state. The breath control, absolute presence, it's not just spiritual, it's science. Slowing down their perception, improving focus, and lowering that stress really helps them become superhuman. So I know the big question is, are Jedi superhuman? Maybe. But the real question is, how much more human could we become if we train like them? The Force may be fiction, even though I know some of us wish it wasn't, but unlocking your body's full potential, that might be the most Jedi thing we can actually do today. So, okay, I don't know if this is what it's actually called, but this next segment I'm going to go into is called Jedi Precognition. So, really, it's the science behind gut feelings. In Star Wars, Jedi don't just see the future, they feel it. Anakin is described as being able to anticipate events before they happen. So Luke blocks blaster bolts with a lightsaber blindfolded. And Obi-Wan? He calls sensing disturbances in the Force his Tuesday afternoon. Wonder what his Mondays look like. But is there a scientific basis for this kind of precognition? So let's talk about it. The predictive brain. So our brains are prediction machines. They constantly analyze the past and present to guess, what happens next, usually without even us ourselves realizing it. So neuroscientist Jeff Hawkins describes the brain as kind of an always running model. It's always forecasting outcomes like a weather app for survival. This explains why athletes read the play or why you would swerve before a crash that you consciously didn't even see coming. It's really not magic, it's just high-speed subconscious processing. I wonder what GPU the brain is using. I want some of that for my AI. So muscle memory and autopilot mode. This is one of the things that's kind of shocked me, and these are things that can happen to you. Have you ever driven home and realized you don't remember the trip? That's honestly your brain on autopilot. It's powered by muscle memory and routine and driven behavior. Once tasks become familiar, the brain offloads them to the subconscious circuits, freeing up conscious thought for bigger problems. Like, crap, what am I going to get my wife for Mother's Day? Or she called me and was yelling at me and I don't remember what I did wrong. Good Lord, I forgot about Mother's Day. So as I continue to grasp the fact that I haven't got my wife a gift yet for Mother's Day, honestly, this is all multitasking. So like Jedi or Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, you handle routine while focusing on the now and the next. Now, we all have had gut feelings, and this is honestly not just a metaphor. The gut and brain are connected through the vagus nerve. So this link allows your gut to influence decisions, stress, even emotions. So a gut feeling might literally be your body reacting to danger before your mind catches up with it. So here's one for the books. When it comes to stress, it could actually help sharpen this instinct. So in modern life, our lightsaber duels are job loss, deadlines, family pressure, but our fight or flight system doesn't know the difference. Stress can sometimes sharpen cognition, forcing us to act faster, think clearer, stay up later. You've probably had those moments where I don't know how I came up with that solution or it just kind of hit me. Our brains are like neural networks. AI makes predictions almost the exact same way. I mean, really, all it's doing is analyzing patterns, it's guessing outcomes, and like your brain, it learns through data. The only difference is you come with instincts, emotions, and experience built in. So maybe Jedi aren't seeing the future. They're just better at reading the present and letting their minds work before their mouths catch up. So Jedi precognition isn't about prophecy. It's about presence. It's about pattern. It's about prediction. It's your brain, with the governor off, tuned to the world like a hypersensitive radar. And maybe the more we trust our training, our guts, the closer we're going to get to using the Force every day. All right, so there was a time in my life where I wanted to be Wolverine, but I always had trouble deciding between like Wolverine's powers or Storm's, from the X-Men, because Storm could make lightning and electricity. And then I saw Senator Palpatine, and he used something called Force Lightning. So that's cool. Something cooler? He didn't invent it. Nature already beat him to it. So to catch everybody up, in the Star Wars universe, Force Lightning is one of the most iconic and terrifying powers wielded by the dark side. But what if the key to that power has been hiding in plain sight? In the form of an electric eel. Electric eels use specialized cells called electrocytes. Think of each one as a biological battery. When the eel wants to strike, its brain triggers thousands of these cells at once, forcing ions across membranes and waves that become voltage. And the result? Up to 600 volts delivered through the water. And even more impressive, they do this without frying themselves. Their organs are arranged so current flows outwards and their bodies are insulated. It's like being a taser with built-in rubber gloves. Okay, so from eels to humans, let's talk about human electricity, the everyday spark. So our bodies run on electricity too. Neurons fire using electrical impulses, and our muscles contract because of ion gradients. Sometimes we even spark ourselves with static. Shout out to every carpeted hallway in the wintertime. If you're from the Midwest, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So honestly, we can't generate much. And unlike eels, we don't have these things called electrocytes. We can harness microcurrents for devices like pacemakers, but we can't shoot bolts, at least not yet. Scientists are already developing eel-inspired power systems that convert biochemical energy into usable electricity. Some ideas involve wearing kind of piezoelectric fibers that harvest kinetic energy as you walk. Piezoelectric energy, okay. And there are others exploring nanomaterials that can convert body heat or muscle motion into electricity. But you may be asking, why? And my answer to that is, why not? But seriously, because we have an energy problem. Your AR glasses, your smartwatches, they need more power than current batteries can hold. We all have been there when our smartwatches have died in the middle of trying to find out what time it is. But what if your body could keep them charged? So with that, obviously, we're going to flow right into the supersuit angle. In sci-fi, characters often wear suits that channel their powers. That might not be just fiction. Future suits could actually contain conductive fibers or nanocapacitors to store and discharge electricity safely. So not enough to shoot lightning from your fingertips, but enough to power low-energy devices. Maybe even boost muscle output with an exosuit. So we may not be zapping stormtroopers anytime soon, but in the battle for portable power, your body might be the next power plant. And if force lightning ever becomes real, you better believe I'm going to try it. But most likely it'll be started in a lab and not on the Sith throne. So in Star Wars, Leia and Luke don't need a holo call to communicate. They just know. When one is in danger, the other feels it. When one is hurt, the other senses it. It's been described as a force bond, a kind of dyad, a connection beyond words. It's also one of the most endearing sci-fi representations of something we've all heard about in real life, twin telepathy. So if you've been on the internet the past year, at least from my perspective, I've seen a lot of these things I call twin challenges, where somebody will place two twins on opposite sides of a wall or a door, and they'll ask them to do things like raise a hand, and they raise the same hand, or lift a leg, and they'll raise the same leg. Do a dance, and they'll do the same dance. So science hasn't validated any of this, but the stories, they're everywhere, and they persist across culture and time. So the question really is, what does science actually say about twins? And the sad news is, most studies have failed to find any consistent evidence of true psychic communication between twins. I know that's heartbreaking. I'm sorry. So when the twins were tested under controlled conditions, their ability to read each other's minds fall basically within chance. Now, that doesn't mean nothing is happening, but it kind of also does. So what science has actually shown is that twins, especially identical ones, develop extremely deep emotional and cognitive bonds. They process the world similarly. They respond to emotional stimuli in near synchrony, and they can mirror each other's psychological states. This explains kind of why a twin might feel something is wrong, not because of telepathy, but because their baseline connection makes emotional ripples easier to detect. There's also brainwave synchronization. So there are some recent studies that show that when two people are emotionally close and engaged in a shared activity, their brainwaves can start to sync. Literally. This isn't like telepathy, but it's neural alignment, which might be a scientific cousin of what the Jedi call the Force. So let's talk about the future tech. So there are tech developers and neuroscientists that are exploring brain-to-brain communication. Brain-to-brain communication. Whew, today's a day. Using EEGs and neural interfaces, they've already transmitted simple data from one person to another. In the far future, we may see neural mesh tech that lets people share not just thoughts, but emotions, entire state of consciousness. Does that kind of sound familiar? So maybe Luke and Leia aren't psychic after all. Maybe they're just showing us a future where our connections run deeper, a little more direct, a little more human. Or maybe the Force is real and we just aren't able to measure it? Who knows? All right, so I saved the best for last. And what I'm going to be talking about here is the Star Wars blasters. Pew pew. Here we go. So we've all seen the slow-moving red streaks of light that somehow miss every single time. Like every important time that you need to actually pew-pew somebody, it never seems to go that direction. But are the weapons just bad, or could it be misunderstood tech? Let's find out. I would like to thank Wikipedia for this because they had a lot of information when it comes to how blasters actually work. And in Star Wars lore, blasters, they're not lasers. Yeah, that will always happen. I'm sorry. But they're more like plasma cannons. Each blaster has two key components: a gas cartridge, often filled with something called Tabana gas, and a power pack. And the power pack provides the energy needed to superheat and compress the gas into plasma bolts, which is then magnetically contained and launched at high speeds. And this gives us that classic glowing bolt flying by and, as usual, missing its target. Now, one of the most persistent questions that I have heard when it comes to the blasters is, do they ever run out of ammo? And the short answer is yes, but it's almost never shown on screen. Kind of like when characters go to the bathroom, right? So blasters can either run out of gas or power, and in many Star Wars games and role-playing rulebooks, power packs must be replaced after 25 to 50 shots on the weapon style. Some sources say military-grade weapons have modular energy packs that can be hot-swapped quickly in battle. Others suggest they've recharged like a phone between fights. So another question that I'm sure a lot of people have questions about is, why do blaster bolts move so slowly? And honestly, this might be where Star Wars prioritizes visuals over physics. In-universe explanations suggest that plasma bolts move slower because they are heavier and magnetically contained. But this also makes them easier to deflect, hence why you can never hit a Jedi with a blaster bolt. Either way. So in real science, plasma weapons would move slower than light-based lasers, but not that slow. I mean, estimated speeds vary from 78 to 135 miles per hour, film-based, and through some sources cited theoretical speeds a little bit higher. I guess in the expanded universe. I consider myself a nerd, but holy cow, they really went to the level for this. So thank you, Star Wars fans. So honestly, the reason it's so slow is because it's part of tech and it's also part of dramatic flair. But not that we'd want to, but it does beg the question, can we ever really build a blaster? Well, in theory, okay? So plasma weapons are possible, but they require massive amount of energy. And we have energy problems right now, just with AI. But they also require magnetic containment. And then you have electro lasers, and these are lasers triggered through electrical shocks, and they're really bulky, but they are in development. And obviously, we do have the weapon when it comes to sci-fi, and those are lasers. And they're being used in military applications, but real lasers, they move invisibly and instantly because they're light. So to sum it up, the big issues with creating some of this in our current state is that the power supply will be an issue. Cooling is going to be an issue. Containment is going to be an issue. And finally, safety is also going to be an issue. So right now we're closer to laser turrets than blaster pew-pews. But if you give scientists, let's say 100 more years and a breakthrough in portable fusion power, then maybe. So what you're saying is, I got a chance. So no, you don't have a chance. Star Wars blasters aren't great weapons by modern Earth standards, but in a galaxy far, far away that has force fields, cyborgs, and sentient computers, maybe their real value isn't raw power, maybe it's something cultural. They're not just tech, they're tradition. And if you ask me, sometimes that tradition just goes pew pew. All right, so here we are. We've questioned droid crews, we've chased entangled particles, we've tested the limits of the human body, we've tuned into our gut feelings and sparked with the possibility of bioelectricity. We've seen how Star Wars doesn't just thrill us. It challenges us to think bigger. Maybe think bigger. At least not think at all sometimes. Could we really train like a Jedi and unlock superhuman strength? Could our brains one day operate with AI-like speed and foresight? Could our bodies power the next generation of wearable tech? Could we build the kind of connected consciousness that once only existed in fantasy? The Force in the movies is kind of magic, but maybe, just maybe, I mean, I don't know. So wherever you are in the galaxy this May 4th, stay curious, stay brilliant, and may the science be with you.